Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. They offer free checking with industry-leading mobile banking. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more. What's going on, Hokie Nation? Happy Monday morning. We got the whole crew on set. It's been a very eventful week for Virginia Tech men's and women's basketball. We're going to talk a little bit of football as well. It's all coming up on episode 342 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, and it starts right now. We're recording on Tuesday, January 22nd, 2024, from our studio at the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Hey, remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend, and head over to techsideline.com to check out our extensive editorial content. As always, the first month of subscriptions is free. I'm your host, Giovanni Heater, joined alongside Chris Coleman, our lead analyst and columnist. Across the way, managing editor, David Cunningham. Sitting in the fourth chair today, Andy Bitter, our senior staff writer. We got Will joining us here in the studio today, behind the scenes, hanging out, and Nick Brown, the mustache man, producing as well. Tech Sideline, as always, is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. And we open our show today, folks, by talking a little bit of football. Give you about a 15-minute football update. We start with Keonta Jenkins. He's coming back for Virginia Tech. That's confirmed. Andy, you got more for us on that?
He's back. That's the news. I think it was sort of trending that way for a while. He didn't make some announcement. I just asked about it last week. I'm like, school started. They've reconvened for practice. Is this guy back? And they're like, yeah, he's back. Clayton Frady is not. He's moved on to past football, I believe. Those are the last two guys that had a COVID year left that we were waiting to hear from. So Keonta coming back, that's big news. I mean, he was a very good player for them last year when he was healthy. Yeah, it looked like he had shoulder problem for part of the year. A couple games where he didn't get as many snaps as he would have hoped. Caleb Woodson getting a lot of work in his absence for some of those. But, when he's healthy and he's out there, this is a very experienced guy you have at that star linebacker position that, Brent Pry has talked him up in the past as being sort of what they like at that spot. So to have him back, just another veteran piece on this defense, it's got to feel good for the Hokies.
I think it's great that he's coming back, and I would move him to safety.
Interesting.
For a couple of different reasons. Number one, you want to get the best 11 players on the football field and in the right positions. I look at a guy like Kelly Lawson, who was one of 6 players this past week to top out at 20 miles an hour for Virginia Tech. He's a freak athlete, but they're playing him on the short side of the field, inside the tackle box, at the will position. It's like all that athleticism is going to waste there, in my opinion. It's like putting a Ferrari in a monster truck competition. It's just not the right fit for him. I would move Keonta Jenkins to safety, where he has started before, where if he wants to make the NFL, that's his best opportunity. And then I would move Lawson to star, get him that athleticism on the wide side of the field where he can make a bigger impact. That's Chris, what I would try this spring.
I want to piggyback off that. By the way, nice shirt.
Thank you.
I like that.
Appreciate
I like that. I want to piggyback off that, ask you, what goes into that? Does he have to lose a little bit of weight in order to make that transition, or is it a pretty easy fix?
If he's already if his weight now is 220 to 225 and he's still topping out at 20 miles an hour, which is one of the 6 fastest speeds on the team, he doesn't need to lose any weight. I think he would be better as a football player with more space to operate in, where he can take advantage of his speed, and he's getting blocked there by slot receivers and by tight ends rather than offensive tackles and offensive guards. I just think it's a better fit for him as a football player.
Would you see him at free safety or strong safety, or does it matter?
He's played obviously as the star linebacker on the wide side of the field, so he's used to playing on the wide side of the field, which is the same side the free safety plays on. I think that's up for competition this spring. Tech has a bunch of guys who have played strong safety but Nasir Peoples is gone. Who's going to play free safety? A lot of times in the spring, Tech, whether it's the former staff or the current staff, and it goes even back to the Frank Beamer days, they don't necessarily do a free safety and a strong safety in the spring. They just do left safety and right safety. That way they can get a look at everybody, both on the short side and the wide side, and try to figure out who's the best fit. That's how I would approach things this spring. I think with the way McDonald played at will down the stretch, he's your best option there. But I also think Kelly Lawson is one of your best 11 players if he's playing in the right position. So, and I know Tech's going to need another safety, or at least more safety depth too. So I think those position changes could potentially solve some issues for the Tech defense.
Yeah, I think at a position where like the linebackers struggled at times last year, and Keonta Jenkins battled some injury stuff, when he was in the game, he was almost the definition of reliable. You know what you're going to get out of Keonta Jenkins there. If the staff does what Chris is kind of alluding to and looking into moving Jenkins to safety, he's got a safety background. It's not like it's this foreign country to him. He's familiar.
His first game at Virginia Tech as a true freshman, he started at free safety against NC State.
That was in COVID, during COVID, yeah.
But I mean, he earned the job.
Yeah. And I think he's a guy. You look at that linebacker room, there were so many unknowns this year. If he stays at linebacker, well, you know what you have in him. If he moves, well, you're doing it for the betterment of the linebacker room. And I think you add, like, if you look at Virginia Tech's linebackers right now, you got Keonta Jenkins and you add Sam Brumfield. Like, those are two really, really valuable, reliable guys. If Jenkins does end up moving, okay, well, that means the staff feels comfortable with what they have at the behind him. But if not, those are two guys that you can probably rely on next year.
Mr. Bitter, I wanted to ask you, what does all this mean when you look at the scholarships for Virginia Tech with a guy like that coming back?
Well, I've got them. Look at my little handy chart here, which is available online. I've got them at 89 scholarships total right now. That includes everybody that's enrolling in the summer that's not here yet. So there's going to be more attrition. You need 4 more just to hit the 85 number. Whether you get there with some medicals, some guys that enter the transfer portal later on, they're past the point where Brent Pry used to have that tool as a new coach where you could just remove people from the roster. They'd stay on scholarship, but they wouldn't be playing anymore. A couple of receivers, I believe, went that route before. That's not available anymore. So they're going to have to nudge guys in a certain direction to get down to the number. But they'll get down to the number. They always do. And it wouldn't surprise me if they went past 85, to get to 84, 83, and possibly bring in a transfer to bolster the roster in some other spots.
Chris, you brought up that 20-mile-an-hour club.
Yeah.
That was a couple of days ago. It was pretty cool. They had literally a speed limit type sign. Everybody autographed it, took a picture with it. You want to break down the list for us? And anybody jump out to you that surprised you at all?
C.J. McCray, defensive end, one of the 6 players. I think it's impressive. Now, you're not in a situation too often where a defensive end is actually going to get up to 20 miles an hour, ideally. If it does, then it's because he's chasing guys down the field on long
Daddy
runs.
Nicholas chasing down a guy in the Russell Athletic Bowl.
Exactly what that is. Yep. Bishal Tootin is on the list. Like, he doesn't really look fast until you see him running away from people, and you're like, wow, I guess he is fast.
Or he always just seems to get around the edge.
Yeah.
UVA probably thought he was pretty fast.
Probably
on those
so, yeah.
touchdowns.
So did Florida State. Thomas Williams, redshirt freshman defensive back. I think he's been a corner. I know he was hurt this past preseason. He's another guy who I think, could also be a safety. And with this kind of top speed, I would think maybe even free safety on the wide side of the field if they wanted to experiment with him there. Joshua Clark, true freshman corner. It's good to see him enroll and then immediately stand out in strength and conditioning. Kelly Lawson, we already talked about that. And then Pop Watson.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, so you got literally guys all over the field when you work in defensive ends, quarterbacks. Obviously, the guys you expect is your skill, your running backs and your corners and things like that. Well, the ACC schedule reveal is coming up kind of pieces in the next couple of days. They say the big one is on the ACC network on the 24th, so Wednesday, 2 days from now. Andy, can you kind of break down for us what we're going to hear when, the importance of it when it comes to the ACC schedule reveal the next couple of days?
For some reason, they are doing this over 3 days. When I tweeted this could have been an email. You could just send this out. You don't need to do a TV show over 3 days with this. It's kind of ridiculous how they've turned these scheduled releases into this, days of programming. The ACC is doing it this way. Week 1 schedule revealed tonight. I think everybody but 2 teams knows who they're playing in week 1.
Boston College and Florida State.
Yeah.
What's the reveal? That Florida State is playing Boston College? Is that what it's going to be? I'm not
play
sure.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, tomorrow night. We're recording this Monday. On Tuesday, they will be revealing the Thursday and Friday night specialty games. And then Wednesday, the rest of the schedule. I mean, part of the ridiculousness of this is we know who they're playing. They've known who they're playing for a while. We know who they're playing in 2030 right now in the ACC, which is perhaps a bit optimistic about what the ACC membership will look like at that point in time. But I mean, we know the opponents. We know the times for days for 5 of the games, basically. We know the 4 non-conference games: Vanderbilt, Marshall, Old Dominion, Rutgers. And we know UVA is going to be the last game of the season. So, whether that's on Friday, Thursday, Saturday, it'd probably be Saturday at this point. But, we're filling in the blanks on 7 of the games and when do they play these teams. And there's a little bit of analysis to do there in terms of here's a couple road games in a row. But I don't know why they hype this so much in the middle of January. Here's the release. It's we know who's on the schedule. Just send it out in an email and we can move along.
Well, there's been a small rumor bug going around that maybe Old Dominion is not going to be a continued partnership on the schedule. There was talk that there's a possibility, and this was all on the message boards, by the way, that maybe they don't play this year, right? Can we put that to rest? Can we talk about that a little bit here on the set?
Yeah, my understanding is this year's game is on at ODU. Now, I think there might be discussions down the line in terms of how if they continue this partnership, which, it goes through 2031. I know that's been sort of a sticking point with a lot of Hokies fans about playing this team this long in a home and home. I think, Tech might like some schedule flexibility with that, and the penalty for buying out isn't too great, but I think it's too late at this point to do it for this year, and I would fully expect them to go to Norfolk this year to play the game. Yeah,
we've heard that Tech wants to buy out of it. We don't know it for a fact, but we've heard that that's what Witt wants to do. That could be because he just knows the fans hate it. It could be because Pry is look, we need to play an FCS team every year like everybody else to get ourselves one guaranteed win, one more guaranteed win every year. Or it could be a combination of all those things. There's no way ODU is going to be oh, sure, we'll let you out of it this late in the process, because then both teams would have to find a new opponent for this year, and football schedules are generally done at least 2 to 3 years in advance. I think ODU, this is my gut feel of how it'll happen. It's not, they're not going to buy out of it now. This year's game is going to be on at ODU, and ODU is going to treat it as, okay, yeah, this will be the last game. We'll let you buy us out after this year. We'll take one last crack at you at home this year, and we'll paint you as the villain who's trying to buy out of the series because you always lose at Old Dominion, right? So it'll be like the 2003 Pitt game, West Virginia game, when Virginia Tech's leaving the Big East and those fan bases hated Virginia Tech and they went all out when Virginia Tech came to their towns that year. I think that's how this is shaping up for me. I think that's how it'll go down. That being said, Tech should not have any trouble going there and winning the game this year.
It's not as if bad things haven't happened at Norfolk before. Well, for this team. You look back at the first 2 games there. It was the wake-up call, warning shot of the Fuente era. It was oh, things are not right with this program at that point. Trayvon Hill gets kicked out of the program the day after that game. They lose Josh Jackson to a broken foot. All the things that happened in that game is a turning point for that program and that coaching staff. And then the last time they go down there, Brent Pry's debut, they lose the game. They get burglarized at halftime in their locker room. It's
stuck in an elevator.
Yeah, stuck in the elevator. All the things. Connor Blum ran into a fan coming off the field, gave a little something extra there. Everything about this series has just been disastrous for Virginia Tech.
In 2018, David Cunningham got an unsportsmanlike flag on the sideline.
Don't forget about the snap, the
Yeah, the
over
Keystone
head.
Cops snap. I mean, it just everything has gone wrong for this program when they've gone down there. And you look at the series, and you can kind of see why Virginia Tech would want out of it. It's like, what is the upside of this? Mm-hmm. You go down there and lose, and people make fun of you for it forever. You go down there and win, you'd be like, well, you're supposed to win. You're playing ODU. It's like, okay, well, what is the upside to this? And I know people say, oh, visibility and recruiting. It's like, is it really that big of a deal? Every game is on TV at this point. You're down there. Like, I don't feel like it's as big of a deal from a visibility standpoint as people might make it out to be. So, and there are other interesting games that you could play instead. And this gives you a little more flexibility to go out and find some. So, the series has perhaps run its course. I don't think it's run its course in terms of this is the last time they'll play the game, but I think there's probably some thoughts within the athletic department that, hey, there are other games out there that you could go pursue if you get out of this.
When are we going to see Tech play JMU? Is that something that we could cook up?
2026.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
There's the answer right there. Well, we're making excellent time, gentlemen, and I commend you for that. Anything else on football before we move on to some men's hoops talk?
I don't think so. We're just waiting on the schedule to come out.
Could have been an email.
Yeah.
Could have been.
I mean, it's so ridiculous. They're trying to pump up this ACC show at 4:00. It's like, come tune in. It's like, really, just put it out. Just
you know what I will say?
You can tweet it these days.
They should be spending their time talking about their the basketball right now. Like Andy said earlier, like, oh, I didn't realize there are 7 ACC women's basketball teams in the top 25. Like, this is a good basketball conference, especially on the women's side. They've got a great men's basketball matchup. I believe it's tonight. I don't think it's on. I think it's on ESPN. It's Carolina Wake. Like Carolina is like a top 10 team in the country, as is Duke. Like, they should be talking about basketball, but instead they're going to spend 3 days talking about this football schedule that doesn't happen until the fall.
Listen, we all know that football pays the bills, and that's just how it rolls, especially in the world of television. Well, we do move on to men's basketball now. We will tell everybody, though, we're going to have a show here Thursday morning, early Thursday morning. We're going to get here, and we're going to talk our thoughts on the Virginia Tech football schedule when we know everything. So definitely be on the lookout for that. These guys are going to have articles throughout the week, is my understanding as well. Talking all about the football
after we
schedule.
say how ridiculous just the schedule reveal is, it's like, we're going to dedicate a whole podcast.
Yeah.
Talk. So,
we're going to plug our
hypocrites,
stuff,
all of us right here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, we are doing its own dedicated podcast, so that there is some humor in that. Nevertheless, well, Virginia Tech men's basketball, you got a tough loss and you got a big win, and the win really is colossal. But first, we'll talk about the loss. It was Wednesday on the road in Charlottesville. Man, you hate losing at JPJ. The Hokies haven't won there since 2018. 65-57, the final score. Sean Padula leads the way in that one with 18 points, but it just felt like Tech never really found their footing offensively. And I ask you guys this, was it Tech couldn't get things going offensively, or is UVA's defense that good? We know that's the brand of Tony Bennett and that team, and they seem very impressive, especially on the inside against the Hokies.
Well, you know, they're a top 20 team in defensive efficiency, maybe top 15 now. I haven't looked at the updated numbers, but yeah, I mean, they're a really good defensive team, and they're unbeaten at home. So if you
14,
there you go, 14th in adjusted defensive efficiency. So I think if you'd told me at the start of last week that Virginia Tech would split 2 road games against Virginia and NC State, I would have taken it. Yeah, I mean, I would take that any week. If you play 2 road games, I say you say, yeah, you can win one of them. I'd be like, I'll take it right now. That's how hard road games are to win.
Yeah, what UVA did was really take Virginia Tech's front court out of the game. I thought Elijah Poteet was pretty good, but Lynn Kidd was almost invisible at times. Jordan Minor, the transfer from Merrimack, was awfully good. He had 16. To defend UVA, I mean, it's all the UVA's all this blocker mover stuff and guys curling off screens, and then you roll in the pick and roll action. And Tech was fine until it got into pick and roll action, and the bigs kind of got lost, especially Kidd got lost in that. And Jordan Minor got a bunch of looks at the rim, kind of open. Some of them he missed. On the other end, UVA's defense is very good, and Virginia Tech struggled to score, struggled to take care of the ball, which of course is a theme, which we'll talk a lot about. But when you're not scoring and and your defense isn't quite there. You also have to remember, like, this is the first game back for Hunter Couture, and I thought he was good, but it just was not Virginia Tech's night. And it isn't Tech's night a lot of times. It goes to JPJ. I mean, Tech's lost 10 of the last 11. That is a tough place to win. Virginia has the longest home win streak in the country. Like, that's a good team in a tough place to play. Tech just did not play well.
Plain and simple. Anything else on that UVA game you guys want to dive into before we kind of bring it back to the positive and talk about this big win on the road at PNC Arena?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Tech went up there and got blown out like they did.
Yeah, I mean, it was close.
They were competitive.
I think the biggest thing is that I was very interested to see the NC State game, because that was a team that is an NC State team that is much more athletic. Like Virginia Tech, Virginia is a team Tony Bennett recruits to his system. You get guys who maybe aren't the most athletic, but they're good on both ends. And they play good defense, and they excel offensively usually in that system. NC State's a little bit different. A lot of athleticism, bigger, faster, stronger guys that don't really play as much system basketball. The fact that Virginia Tech turned the ball over as much as it did in that UVA game and was still in the game was impressive to me. Like, Tech played well enough in that second half to be in the game, but the bottom line is you can't turn the ball over 10 or 12 times in that first half.
Yes.
Tech shot itself in the foot too many times. I think it was 15 turnovers, 10 in the first half, 5 in the second. Tech played well in the second half. The problem has been when Tech has gone on the road this year, up until Saturday, it did not start the game well. It turned the ball over way too many times. I think back to the Wake Forest game. I was not in, I don't know if the word was encouraged, but I was like, oh, okay. The fact that Tech pulled within 6 points 6 different times in the second half, all you need is to hit one basket and you're right there. Like Tech was there. It wasn't like Tech got the doors blown off at UVA, which has happened in the past. So I think that's a positive. And then you flip the script to Saturday, and Tech, I think, again, a different NC State team who is not as good defensively, but I think Tech kind of excelled in the areas it was supposed to on Saturday, and still turned the ball over a lot, but was able to overcome that and come out with a win against a team that is not nearly as good defensively as UVA is.
Let's set the table a little bit with this NC State win on the road down in Raleigh on Saturday. It was really an interesting day all across the conference. Saturdays in college basketball are always fun because pretty much everybody's playing, right? Virginia Tech comes away with an 84-78 win against an NC State team that was receiving top 25 votes. They were not in the AP top 25, but they were in that upper echelon, no doubt. This was a big win for Virginia Tech. First road ACC win. Hunter Couture shoots the lights out. He has 19 points for Virginia Tech. Easy to look at the box score here and say, oh, Tech won because they shot the ball so well. 47% from beyond the arc, 53% from the floor. But I know you guys both believe that there's more than meets the eye there. David, what went so right for Virginia Tech besides the ball just simply going in the hoop?
Tech defended very well. DJ Burns, I saw some folks on the message boards we're joking because he's listed at like 6'9", 275.
If he's 275, I'm 130. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe I'm pretty sure he's listed at 275.
Yes, he is.
He is as Mike Young referred to him as, a truck. He is a big matchup. And the thing that makes him such a difficult matchup is he's an excellent passer out of the post. I thought Virginia Tech was phenomenal in defending him. He's tricky because you have to converge at a certain moment because he'll pick his pass and dish it out, and then your defense is in rotation. And I thought what Tech did was kind of a little bit of what Wake Forest did the other day against NC State. Burns could catch it, as soon as he started backing down or turned to the basket. As soon as he started moving, Tech had a guy kind of sitting there and they brought the help.
It was a late help.
Help, yes. Yeah. It was not immediate. It wasn't as soon as he caught it.
There was a play in the second half, what I think is dead on to what you're describing, where Barron came over and helped really late. He had already committed himself to the shot. So he couldn't pass it at that point. But Barron getting there, basically as soon as he turned and was going up to shoot, just altered everything for him, and he missed the shot. I thought the timing of that was excellent.
Yeah, there was one under the basket where like Burns basically spun, and I think Mekhi Long was like right there in his face. And it was a scrappy game. NC State had a season high 18 turnovers. Tech had 20, but Tech played good defense. Shot the ball well offensively. I mean, in that second half, Tech did not miss after the 9-minute mark. Like Tech was 14 of 16 from the free throw line and made all 9 of its remaining field goals.
Wow,
that's how efficient Tech was. And Tech overcame turnovers. And this team, this is Mike Young. Mike Young's been doing this for a really long time. This is his second ever team that is below 200 in Ken Palm's adjusted turnover or just turnovers percentage.
And over
metric.
20 years as a head coach. Like
This is his second team.
Yeah.
This is the second time in Tech's ACC era that Tech is below that. The other one was James Johnson's second and last season. It's kind of an outlier. Like Mike Young's teams don't turn the ball over. And
his first team at Virginia Tech, which was kind of just scraped together.
Yeah.
They were 4th nationally in turnover rate. So this year is very much an anomaly, and this is going to be my inside the numbers this week. On average, people blame it on athleticism. That's just what the basic fan says when I read Twitter, when I read the message boards, things like that. Tech isn't athletic enough, so they turn it over. Mike Young's 5 teams at Virginia Tech, if you average out their turnover rate over 5 years, they have a better turnover rate than Buzz Williams' uber athletic teams had over his 5 seasons.
yeah,
And this year is the outlier, but even including this year, the average is still better for Mike Young's teams in terms of turnover rate. This year's team has a turnover problem for sure, but it's not an athleticism issue. Like Sean Padula is a better athlete than Storm Murphy, much better athlete than Storm Murphy. But Storm Murphy had a better turnover rate. So it's not an athleticism thing. It's a decision-making thing.
Yeah, and it's not just Padula. And I
Correct,
thought
exactly.
you had a really good article last week, kind of talking about Tech's turnover issues, and now it's not just Padula. And
He only has the 5th highest turnover rate on the team. There are 4 players ahead of him in turnover rate. I know he has the most number of turnovers because the ball's in his hands more than anybody else.
yeah,
But this has been a team-wide issue.
yeah. I think this team, like I think the NC State game, and the Hokies were up 1, I believe, at halftime, despite 12 first half turnovers. The NC State game is proof that Virginia Tech is a above average basketball team because it turned the ball over 20 times and won on the road. You have to do a lot of things right to be able to do that. You have to shoot well, defend well, like a bunch of other things well to even have the opportunity. And Tech won by 6.
Yeah.
Like to win a little comfortably on the road when you turn the ball over. Like that, I think, in my opinion, that shows that Tech is an above average team. Just got to figure out the turnovers.
Right.
Just got to figure it out. And Mike Young was on the AC teleconference this morning and talked about just how he needs to get Padula off the ball a little bit more. I think MJ Collins, who in my opinion is playing better basketball, he's defending pretty well. He's moving the ball. I thought he was big against NC State as being a secondary ball handler, being able to relieve some stress from Padula because NC State's pressing the entire game. Getting Padula off the ball, I think that will make the overall turnovers go down if the other guys can hang on to it. And I think that's the trick. Across the board, Tech has not turned the ball over, or has not been able to take care of the ball well. But if Tech can do that, and again, Mike Young's team don't turn it over. Mike was on Tech Talk Live and talking. He said the same thing after the NC State game. He said you should be able to spend 15 minutes watching a team practice, watching guys practice, and figure out what they care about when they play basketball. He's like, if you watch our team, you will be able to tell that they care about not turning the ball over. He's like, I scratch my head. It's infuriating. I don't understand why they turn it over. And, sometimes it's like I'm trying to run through all the different plays in my head. Padula's had a couple, like he had a couple against UVA where the ball just like
slipped away.
Yeah, rolled away, dribbled away, slipped away from him. A couple where, you know, the ball goes to Lynn Kidd and he just doesn't catch it, right?
A couple where he gets tackled at midcourt by a 300-pound center.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it was a nice clean steal by Burns on that play.
It's 275, Chris.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of different like types of turnovers. Some of them have been forced, but I thought Padula said it well after the UVA game. And he was very, very frustrated. And he took responsibility for it, but he said, I don't think UVA really forced a lot of turnovers. I think they put us in bad spots defensively. They made us take bad shots, but they did not turn us over. And if Tech can be better, Tech's going to be a much better team overall because Tech's shooting the ball better. I think the offense is flowing better. Like when Tech gets in the half court and Tech doesn't turn the ball over, Tech's been really, really good, and Tech's defended better lately. So I think that kind of just shows like this team has a lot of potential. You know, I think Hunter Couture and Sean Padula kind of carried the load down the stretch in the second half. They scored the ball very well. You know, but to go on the road in the ACC and win, it's not easy. I mean, that was Tech's first road win of the season. And now you come back home, you come back to Blacksburg, you got 3 straight home games. The students are back, the band is back. Tech hasn't played in front of Castle Guard since before Christmas, which is a long time. Now you come back and you're at home and you've got 2 very winnable games, Boston College, Georgia Tech, and you got a Duke team coming in next Monday. Like this is a very interesting stretch for Virginia Tech, and if it can take 2 or 3, you put yourself in good position going forward.
Yeah. Let me share a little story here.
Let's hear it.
I woke up on Saturday morning. All right.
You have a cheeseburger?
No, I did
I
not.
was just
I did
gonna
not.
ask
Well,
him
I have
that.
2 stories, and I have a cheeseburger story too. All right. So when Tech was struggling, and before they played Clemson, I was like, you know what? I'll see if I can start the cheeseburger streak again. So where did I go? I went to Bull and Bones and I got a cheeseburger before that game, and they won. So I'm like, all right, cheeseburger streak started again. And then I had a cheeseburger before the Miami game and they lost. So I tried to just start the cheeseburger streak again. Andy, I'm not even sure.
I think you just wanted cheeseburgers. It sounds
do
like
like
you're just looking for
cheeseburgers.
excuses to buy
Well,
cheeseburgers.
there was a point where they won like 12 games in a row when I ate a cheeseburger before.
Oh,
the game.
well.
And that was the ACC
Direct
title.
correlation.
That was
There's
the
no
ACC,
other explanation.
That was the ACC title stretch.
There you go.
The whole ACC tournament, I had a cheeseburger.
I think
before the
several
game.
other people had different superstitions. I think Clark Rulin kept going to Taco Bell or
Yes,
something
he
like
did.
that.
It was
It's
Taco
like,
Bell.
God bless your colon for driving them through this,
Indeed.
this ACC tournament run.
But all right, so the story I was really going to tell, like, you remember the Florida State game 2 years ago where you went into that game and you're like, Tech has no chance to win this game.
Did that feel like?
I actually woke up on Saturday morning and I'm like, this feels vaguely weird. Like, this team doesn't have a very good record. You're on the road against a team that on paper you don't match up well against. But I was like, you know what? We'll probably win just because, right? And I had that thought. And I kind of had a little
deja
vu. And I was making breakfast. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I need to go post this on the board while I'm in my head. But I've got my breakfast on and cooking. And I'm like, I'll post it after I eat breakfast. And then I promptly forgot. But yeah, I had a weird feeling Saturday morning when I woke up. After feeling the whole week like Tech was going to lose, I woke up on Saturday morning and I thought they were going to win. It's just very strange feeling. But that's what happened.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's like 2 years ago, and you start rolling off a bunch of wins.
I think the biggest thing is Virginia Tech is 3-4 instead of, you look at the last couple of years, Virginia Tech was like 1-6 and 2-5. Like,
and they've got 2 quad 1 wins right now. That's going to fluctuate because Boise's like right exactly 50th.
But you look at Virginia Tech's the last 2 ACC wins. Clemson, if Clemson plays better, that's a quadrant 1 win. NC State, if NC State plays well, that's a quadrant 1 win. Those are your two of your 3 ACC wins. That's important, right? And we talk about in the past couple of years, the ACC wasn't good enough. Like, you didn't get quadrant 1 wins. Like, Virginia Tech has 2 of them now in the first of its first 3 wins. And I think if Tech, it's going to be very interesting because Tech might not be able to reach 20 wins, But if Tech can get to 18, 19 and stack up a bunch of Q1s,
It's got to be a bunch now.
you put yourself in that conversation. And I think it really all depends. Boise State has to continue to play well. Iowa State obviously is going to be a Q1 win. But like Tech's resume is not bad.
Right.
Tech just, it's just not
For an 11-win team, they've got the best resume you could ask for an 11-win team
Yes.
right now. It's a shame Couture missed the Miami game because you know the 12-6 sounds a lot better than 11-7, and 4-3 in the ACC sounds a lot better than 3-4.
Yeah.
Especially with this home stretch coming up. Now you got Boston College and.
You got to win that.
And all right,
Georgia Tech too.
No, you know, normally you'd be like, okay, Boston College at home. Tech is better than Boston College, but also Mike Young's never beaten Boston College. Oddly enough,
5.
crazy. Yeah, it's not like BC's putting a bunch of super teams out there on the court either.
No. To preview Boston College just for a brief sec. Quentin Post. They're
Feels like he's been there for forever.
yeah. He's very good. He can step out, shoot the three. He's good down low. He and Graham Bazilli went toe to toe last year.
Quite a good post player. Huh?
Played him twice last year, right?
Yeah. The one in Boston, Couture didn't play, and then BC barely
beat Tech twice,
eked out.
right?
Yeah. This is a game Virginia Tech should win. But again, it's gonna. Boston College is very good offensively, not as good defensively. Virginia Tech comes out and defends like it did, disciplined. It's gonna like. This team has been better defensively most of the year. If it comes out and plays good defense against Boston College, it'll win.
I mean, I think that's a point we have to bring up because we talked about all in the preseason. This team has to be better defensively. I think they were, 139th in adjusted defensive efficiency last season, something like that. They're 46th right now. And 46th with all those turnovers, right? Like they've given up a number of points off turnovers this year. Their basic half-court defense, I would say, would probably be top 40 in defensive efficiency if they could throw out the turnover disparity. I think they've made massive improvements on that end of the court. It's not always perfect. I think they could have done better there against UVA, for example, but they're playing good enough defense to make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
The issue is turnovers. Yep.
Yeah.
And consistently, like there's some days where you can't miss, and then there's other days like that UVA game where you can't buy one.
It helps when you make 100% of your shots over 9 minutes.
Yeah, well, and I think that's tough because it's like that's a stretch against a really good defense. Tech didn't exactly like what plagues Tech is over the final 15 minutes of the first half at Virginia. Tech had 3 field goals. You can't sustain games like that.
You can't end the first half with 18 points and really 15 because Couture hit a pretty much buzzer-beating 3 to give him 18 before the break. I mean, it's very difficult to win a game that way.
The fact that Tech was in that, like the fact that that game was an 8-point game and it was that close after Virginia Tech had the first half struggles it did, like I think that shows that the team is figuring it out. And here's the other thing. I joked with, maybe it was you after the game at the UVA game, Gio, but like I fully expect when Virginia comes to Castle in a couple of weeks for Big Monday, I fully expect Tech to win and win by 8 to 10 points because Tech is very good at home. UVA is not very good on the road. And
Castle will be rocking because
Tech
it's UVA.
won't. And Tech, it's very unlikely that Tech will make 3 field goals in 15 minutes again, right? Like And I think these 2 games this past week were games where Virginia Tech really learns about itself. You learn about yourself. You learn about how you stick together defensively. Because I think teams the last couple of years, like if Tech is 2-5, this is a completely different conversation. If Tech does not beat NC State.
Yeah.
But Tech is in a much better spot. Tech went on the road and was able to kind of bounce back from a road loss. Went on the road. Like that takes a lot of credit. That takes a lot to overcome. It takes a lot of guys sticking together to turn the ball over that much. Like Tech's in a much better spot. 2 games this week. Tuesday, Boston College, 9:00. Saturday against Georgia Tech. You gotta win these 2 games. These are games you have to win. But if you do, you're sitting there at 5-4 in the ACC and 13-7, and it looks a lot better.
before the Duke game too, and that could set up, if you win the next two, that could set up a real fun big Monday inside the castle against the Blue Devils, who currently 7th in the country. Andy, wanted to give you the opportunity. You can also tell me you got nothing.
I watched both of these games this week. I was pleasantly surprised to find out I had the CW on my roster. It wasn't on the guide, but then it showed up when I went into the home thing. I'm like, all right, it's just not on my listing of channels. So I did watch the whole game. I think what strikes me about this is, you look at the ACC and how these games play out. It seems like every game is kind of similar. And it's a tight game with 5 minutes left. And then how you play down the stretch. I mean, you saw Virginia Tech played against NC State. They really, open it up there with 4 or 5 stops in a row. And then their Couture's hitting baskets. Padula, got it going offensively at the right time there at the tail end. They pull away for a comfortable win there. Maybe a little less comfortable than they wanted to be in the final minutes with how they played there. But it seems like every game that they play in, Miami, Florida State, Virginia wasn't exactly a blowout, but it wasn't tight, but 5 points max lead or something like that. Every game is tight. And I feel like that's going to be the case with a lot of ACC games this year because, with the exception of UNC, I mean, I guess Duke in that conversation too, but, Duke just lost to Pitt. Yeah. Struggled against Georgia Tech, lost to Georgia Tech earlier this year. I mean, it's not quite Duke, all caps Duke. I think it's UNC, space, Duke, space, and then everybody else in the ACC, Louisville way at the bottom. But, I mean, there's a lot of similar teams, and there's got to be a lot of competitive games, and it's just going to be, a dogfight in some of these games to get through and win at the end. Now, I'm curious this week how Virginia Tech handles it against two teams it should beat, that historically maybe it doesn't always beat or ever beat in BC's case. It seems like, I mean, they need these 2 wins. They need them badly. They need to start stacking up some wins even before you talk about, beating a Duke or maybe UNC and getting some of those marquee wins on their schedule. They just need wins, period. And this is the perfect opportunity for them to do that.
Well said. I want to talk about that Duke pick.
Let it rip. That was
that
fun.
Picture. I assume you know what I'm referencing. Blake Hinson. Yeah. He jumped on press row in front of the Cameron Crazies afher Pitt beat Duke. Did you see that?
Oh yeah,
they were days after we were there, David.
I know. I was like, there was nobody there weren't nobody there, but there was nobody on press row for the women's game. We were there on Thursday, barely anybody there, and then a couple days later for the men's game, he jumps on press row. First of all, that is not it's as wide as this arm of the chair. It's not very wide. And he's standing on it. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to fall. But that was awesome. And the number of double birds he was getting.
No doubt. Oh, it'll be one of the iconic
certainly telling me
pictures.
Number one in their hearts out there.
Of all the iconic pictures in the history of Pitt basketball.
That's up there.
That's up there. No doubt about it. That's got to be up there.
It's that and Jerome Ford breaking the backboard on the dunk. Or
that's pretty much
those are the 2.
Yeah. Probably the only 2. Yeah.
Well, I think that puts a little bit of a close of the book here on our men's basketball conversation. Again, it's a big week. Boston College coming up on Tuesday. That's tomorrow. And then Saturday against Georgia Tech before they turn right around and play top 10 Duke inside Castle for big Monday a week from today. As always, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. As our presenting sponsor, First Bank and Trust Company's support has been invaluable to TSL, helping us to bring you all the great content across all of our platforms. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Bank with First Bank and Trust Company. Visit firstbank.com to learn more. Oh boy, let's unpack what's going on in the world of women's basketball, and we start the headliner. Injuries for Virginia Tech. Georgia Amoore goes down in the second half against the Duke Blue Devils. Hokies ended up falling on the road down in Durham. Then Kayla King goes out late in the ball game against Clemson just yesterday. Hokies bounce back. They beat Clemson. It wasn't necessarily easy throughout, but they do end up pulling away towards the end in the second half in front of a pretty good crowd in Castle. But the really thing that stands out here, Tech, and injuries are a part of it, loses back-to-back games for the first time since 2021-2022 when they lost in the ACC tournament semifinal and then got upset by 12-seed Florida Gulf Coast in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that Duke is a good team. Again, there are 7 ranked ACC women's basketball teams. Duke is a very good team, and Duke is not one of them, which kind of just tells you about the state of the ACC. And on Sunday, Virginia had not won a road game in the ACC yet, went down and upset Florida State. Like this league is very good top to bottom. And I think that showed a little bit on Sunday when Tech it took them a little bit of time to pull away from Clemson. That loss at Duke, Gio, you and I were both there. Duke is a physical team, and it was honestly a little bit of a mirror game, kind of deja vu back to last year's Duke game. Elizabeth Kitley was better. Last year she had 4 points, I think, in that game. This year she had like 18 and 9 or 18 and 11, something like that. Casual double for her. Yeah. But Virginia Tech struggled to match the intensity. Tech was good in the first quarter. Duke ramped it up in the second quarter. It was a 2 or 3 point game at half, maybe a 5 point game at halftime. Duke comes out, punches Tech in the mouth with an 8-0 run. All of a sudden, Duke's leading. Georgia Amoore goes down with an injury. It's a 3 point game. Duke pulls away. It just a tough game. And I thought on Sunday, listening to Elizabeth Kitley and Matilda Eck, who talked to us after the game, they spoke about how they did not react well after Georgia Amoore went down after that game. She was elbowed in the head. She did not play against Clemson. She was not in the building. That snapped a 101 game starting streak, the third longest in program history. She had started or played in every single game since stepping on campus in spring of 2020. Like, she's an integral part of what Kenny Brooks has built. And when she went down against Duke, Tech kind of looked lost and did not finish that game well. Against Clemson, Kayla King goes down, and Virginia Tech ends up winning that game. And Kayla King, it appears to be okay. She did not have, it looked like a knee thing, or Kenny Brooks said it was a knee thing, but she did not have it wrapped her ice or anything. So I think that bodes well. Kenny Brooks said Georgia Amoore is day to day. You know, she got elbowed in the head, kind of just taking it one day at a time, but she's progressing well. But, Gio, I thought the biggest thing was when Kayla King went down, Virginia Tech, did not skip a beat. And I know it's a little bit different when it's your point guard versus your shooting guard. But Kayla King is a very important piece to this group as well. And how the team responded, Kenny Brooks said he walked over to check on Kayla King on one end of the floor, walked back to the huddle, and Liz Kitley's presence, her voice, her leadership, kind of just bringing the team together. They were focused on what they had to do. And I think that's a learning opportunity. Tech, I was very interested to see how Tech battled against the adversity. It was going to face adversity with not having Georgia Amoore. It did. Played 2 freshman point guards, did not necessarily play clean basketball, had 20 turnovers. I'm getting to cover a lot of turnover basketball lately. But it overcame it. It played good defense. Second half, it shot 65% and really buckled down. I thought it got contributions from everybody. Everybody kind of stepped up, and Kenny Brooks said he told his players, don't try to be Georgia Amoore. Just be the best versions of yourself. I think Tech got that. Elizabeth Kitley casually had 31.
Casually. And she broke the Castle record for field goals in a game. Which is so
wow, really?
Yeah,
with 15.
15.
Wow.
But it went so
her
under
record
the table.
is 17 in other games.
You're right.
That was at George Washington.
Yeah, in 2021. Yeah, nice pull. I think this was a game that Virginia Tech kind of needed. I was very curious to see how Tech responded. How do you respond to adversity? You don't have your All-American point guard who's played every single minute, or not every single minute, every single game for the last 4 years. And Tech figured it out, kind of pieced it together. Kayla King was huge. The freshmen were big. Good win.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Tech has 2 All-Americans, obviously. Their issue this year has been the consistency of the role players and everybody finding their roles. When you lose Georgia Amoore, and I'm not saying I'm glad she got hurt because I'm not, but that forces everybody into bigger roles. And you have to learn how to play within the system then when she's gone. And you can get guilty even, subconsciously of when you're playing with 2, elite players like that. You can get guilty of ball watching and just waiting for them to make a play, right? Well, if one of them's not out there, it's got to be different. So I think Tech has an opportunity to be a better team because they lost her for a game. If it helped everybody else grow and understand their roles and things
Assuming
like that.
she's going to be okay.
Assuming she's going to be okay, which I think she will. I think it's just a Hunter Couture deal because she was not at the game. Because just like Couture was not at the Miami game, because when you're dealing with a concussion protocol, you want to keep them away from light and noise and things like that. But
and it was loud in there.
Yeah, I would guess that she'll be ready to roll next game.
Yeah, but that was well said.
David, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on, obviously in Georgia's absence, you're forced to play a redshirt freshman or a true freshman in Samaya Suffren or Carly Wenzel at the point. Feels like Samaya Suffren just offers this jolt of energy when she's in the ball game. Do you prefer Carly at the 1, or do you prefer Samaya Suffren, or do you think Kenny's mixed them in nicely?
I think the biggest thing is you have to have players that can handle the ball. It doesn't matter who it is. And Samaya Suffren, I think I'm surprised, like looking back on it, surprised that she didn't get more run in some of those early ACC games because, and I know Tech was, some of them were very, very close, but then she comes out and plays the final 17 minutes at Duke. Like, that's surprising. And that was when Georgia Amoore was on the floor. Like, she came out, she was playing. Like, she attacked the basket. She was important in that game.
8 points down the stretch, right? The second half,
yeah,
I
eight or
believe.
nine.
Nine.
She was important. And then she comes out in this game, and you're going to have to play her. I thought Carly Wenzel was pretty good at times in this game. I think both of them were. They had 9 combined turnovers.
There's that.
But they had 8 combined assists. And I think you saw a lot of the bright spots, especially in that second half. I think if you leave them out there for too long, both of them to leave one out for too long or the other out for too long, a mistake will add up eventually, just because they're young, they're freshmen, they are still getting used to it. But I liked how Carly Wenzel responded yesterday. She made some very silly plays, and then in the second half, late in the fourth quarter, I think she made some beautiful passes. She had one where she zipped it down to Liz Kitley, easy layup, and like those are the plays. I remember Kenny Brooks talking about why she redshirted last year. It's like because she's still young and immature in some ways, but then she still has some of the brightest flashes on the team, and she does things like that. I think that's a pretty good combination. I think they're both going to be outstanding players at Virginia Tech, and I think they both took steps forward because they both had to learn how to manage the game. And I think the most important player in yesterday's game, in my opinion, was Kayla King, because she ran the point for a good chunk of the game as well. She had a career-high 9 assists yesterday. She didn't really turn the ball over. She kind of helped everybody settle down. She calmed things down. You need that kind of calming presence. She knows who to get the ball to. It's her All-American teammate, right? And she kind of helped everybody kind of find the flow of the game without stressing too much. And she got some of her shots as well. But I think the biggest thing is Tech learned how to play without Georgia Amoore. And that's something that I don't think, like Tech missed Elizabeth Kitley for a game last year against Virginia and played okay. And I think, and it wasn't something serious that Tech just held her out, but if I remember correctly, I walked away from that game thinking, okay, that's very interesting. The fact that Virginia Tech can play pretty well without Elizabeth Kitley. It took Tech some time in this game, mostly because the players you're falling back on are very, very young and very inexperienced. But to be able to come out with a win, and I think playing in front of 6,400 people in Castle Coliseum helped. That's a big step forward. I think everybody took a big step forward because they had to move the ball. They couldn't rely on Georgia just to create. They had to move it. The other two players, Olivia Sumiel and Matilda Eck, I thought were both really good. I think Sumiel had the play of the game where ball went to her in the corner. She hits a 3 in the second quarter. Virginia Tech was 7 of 19 to that point. Afterwards, it was 22 of 34. And Tech kind of just ran away with the game from there. And you need your veterans to come up and make big plays in that moment. So I know I kind of got off track a tiny bit. I kind of tried to encapsulate everybody. But I think it was a good win.
I'll tell you what I like. So I like it. Virginia Tech is using their version of the Twin Towers a little bit. It's like David Robinson and Tim Duncan in the game.
Clara Strack and Elizabeth Killey.
That is a fun lineup to watch for sure. What did you think about one? I wanted to say I like watching Wenzel off the ball when Suffren or King were running the point, and Wenzel has the opportunity. She had a nice play where she got it on an extra in the corner, and then she had a baseline drive, and just her ability to move off the ball and get herself open, then set things up there. I thought she did nicely at the 2. Karis Baker, only 4 minutes. Did that surprise you at all, David? Because she's played a big role. I mean, she was huge in that NC State game, hit a couple of threes, 2 big rebounds. Were you surprised at all to only see 4 minutes?
I think that this is a game where you kind of ride the hot hand. Like I think that's kind of what Kenny Brooks has done a lot this year. You ride the hot hand. You kind of let everybody play a little bit, but if you've got players that are making shots and players that are not, and players that are moving the ball and players that are not, I don't think there's anything specifically against Karis because she's shown that she can play well. But I think he needed Kayla King on the floor, and he wanted multiple ball handlers on the floor. And I think it was all about breaking Clemson's 2-3 zone and who he thought was going to be most effective. And Karis is effective when she's knocking down threes, but you have to also have to think on the other end. Okay, well, what is the best matchup defensively? I think at times there was a point in that game yesterday where Tech went Olivia Simiel at the 3, Clara Strack at the 4, and Elizabeth Kitley at the 5. That's a very big lineup. And I believe it was Matilda Eck, who's not small at all. I mean, she's pretty big for a wing. And maybe Carly Wenzel at the point. I mean, they or Samaya Suffren, they went big at times. I think it's all just mismatches. And Kenny Brooks knows he's got a pretty good rotation, good bench. But he said it before, part of the game, part of this game for him now is he doesn't know who's going to step up on any given night, right? It can be Karis Baker go for 18 and Clara Strack go for 14, or it could be Carly Wenzel has 11 and Samaya Suffren play. Like, he's still trying to figure it out. Rose Mishaw had, I thought, a big game against Florida State last Sunday. She only played 3 minutes yesterday. So I think it's kind of just taking what the game has given you and playing the players who are playing well and rolling with it. And I think Tech's ability to kind of transform a little bit, play in multiple different lineups, throw different things at it. I think Tech's very versatile if everybody's playing well and playing their roles. But I think, and Kenny Brooks joked yesterday that he went into that yesterday's game playing without Georgia Amoore at the age of 55 and came out at the age of 65 because that's how it took 10 years of the game took 10 years of his life off of him. But if I know it gives him a little heartburn to not know who exactly is going to come out and contribute. But the fact that somebody's always going to be doing it, I think, is a pretty good thing.
I am absolutely stoked for the upcoming women's hoop schedule. They got Georgia Tech coming up on Thursday. That's inside Castle Coliseum. And then you got 4 really tough games
Are you going?
Coming up at Cuse. I was literally just thinking about that as I'm taking a look at this. Maybe. It's far, man. It's 10 hours. Are you going?
No, because the men are at home on Saturday.
The only reason I'm tempted is it is a weekend, which makes things significantly easier there. But anyways,
who wouldn't want to go to Syracuse in late January?
Yeah,
Sounds picturesque.
I mean, it'd be nice to it would be a nice surprise to see my mom. I think she would probably cry if I just knocked on the front door.
It's not going to be much of a surprise now, Gio.
Yeah, which I honestly don't think she watches this, to be honest. But anyway, you got Georgia Tech, then you're at Cuse. Don't kill the messenger, but Cuse is good. They have not lost a home game this year.
Fair.
DeAsia Fair is legit. They just beat Florida State in the Dome. I mean, Florida State's good.
Well, it's hard to play in the Dome.
Well, Florida State's a good team, and Cuse just beat them. Yeah. So they're looking good this year. Virginia coming up inside Castle. Then you got at number 23 North Carolina. Then you got at number 4 NC State. I mean, that's a gauntlet right there. So it's shaping up to be a fun but very enduring couple of weeks here for Virginia Tech women's hoops.
Yeah, and I think right now you got Georgia Tech on Thursday. Georgia Tech's a team kind of in the middle of the pack of the ACC. Then you go to Syracuse. You're going to need Georgia Amoore at Syracuse. Deasia Fair is the real deal. She just eclipsed 3,000. What was it? 3,000?
I believe.
Points?
Let me fact check that.
You should know this off the top of your head, Mr. Syracuse.
Listen, dude. People in Syracuse, it's actually very unfortunate, do not care about women's basketball. They get like 200 fans there, which is why when I came here, I was like, wow, this is really cool how the support and this has made me a women's hoops fan. So I did not grow up following
Saw you in the
Cuse
front
women's
row the other
basketball.
day.
Yeah, decided to enjoy the game as a fan. It was a good time.
Josh Allen jersey didn't work out so hot.
That was a tough one yesterday. But are you fact checking over there?
3,000 career points. Yeah.
There we go. Oof.
Yeah,
She's pretty good.
I shout out Donna DeToda. I went to her Twitter page because I knew she had tweeted about it. Syracuse is good. Virginia, you get them in Castle. Tech goes to UVA the last game of the regular season. But then Carolina and NC State back to back. I mean, and like again, in this league, like you can't just not prepare for Georgia Tech. You can't just not prepare for Virginia. But I like where Tech sits right now. They've been playing good. They've been playing fun basketball, and I think, yeah, they didn't play well against Duke, but I think they needed to learn from it. Like, and I don't mean just the Amoore injury, but I think of the Duke game last year. They had to kind of learn from playing a good Duke team and understanding, okay, Duke's going to defend. Duke's going to be really, really physical. We have to put Kitley in different spots, and we have to understand it. If a team defends us like this, we have to be able to counter it like this. It made Kenny Brooks a better coach, I think. He hates going there because he will claim, and I think Tech has a valid point, that sometimes Tech doesn't get calls down there, and Duke just roughs everybody up and plays very physical. But if you can learn from the experience, it makes you a better team in the future. And kind of like what you said, right? Learning how to play without Georgia Amoore. Assuming Georgia's fine and she'll be back soon, I think that's a positive because that's not something you get to do every day, right? I think the way Elizabeth Kitley played, the way Elizabeth Kitley carried herself yesterday was really big. And, helps when you have another All-American to complement the other one.
3 out of Tech's next 5 opponents are all ranked in the top 25 because Syracuse just got ranked number 22. So 3 out of the next 5 opponents are top 25
Syracuse,
teams.
Carolina, NC State.
Yep.
They're all good.
It's gonna be a fun couple of weeks. Andy, you got anything on women's hoops for us?
Liz Kitley's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't want to state the obvious here, but you look at these last 6 games: 27-12, 27-12, 31-11, 30-12, 18-10, and the Duke loss, 31-8. It's just such sustained excellence that it's almost taken for granted at this point. We talked a lot in this whole podcast about what are these other players doing, how they can contribute. And I mean, she's like the center of the solar system on this team. I mean, she's incredible and just such a constant great threat on this team that, I mean, how many years running now that she's been doing this here? I mean, it's just incredible to watch her. And I think you talk about role players and how they step up, and Georgia coming back. I mean, how far this team goes in the postseason, I think it'll be interesting to see how Kitley elevates her game and how she handles, physical play when they come after her. I think that was something you saw last year in the Final Four when, LSU put a lot of bodies on her, then that became an issue there. But I mean, she's been playing incredible lately, and no surprise. But I think sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle because she's been doing it for so long that it's just become routine.
I don't know if I mentioned this on here before, but if Elizabeth Kitley could become the 3rd player in ACC history, men's or women's, she'd be the 3rd woman to win 3 consecutive ACC Player of the Year awards. I'll give you the 2 women, Alyssa Thomas and
Elena Beard. I was looking it up myself.
Yes. Do you know who the 2 men are then? If you just looked it up,
3.
I was gonna
to win 3 ACC
3 consecutive ACC Player of the Years. One was at NC State and one was at UVA.
David Thompson and Ralph Sampson.
Yes. Sampson.
Did you look it up?
I didn't look that up, but they're pretty good players.
I mean, so that's the company she would join. That's the pace she's on. Like she is.
That's back in men's basketball when guys didn't go pro after one good season.
Right, exactly. That'll never happen again for me.
She is elite. Like soak it in, enjoy it.
Yeah,
like,
imagine having 18-10 and it's considered an off game. Imagine being that good that 18-10 is an off game.
That's
why it's funny.
crazy.
Kenny Brooks was asked about it yesterday and was just like, she comes out here and has 31, and she's asking me what more she can do. And for a lot of players, that's like a career high. Mm-hmm. And that's like her third 30-point game in the last 2 weeks.
Well, it's shaping up to be a fun couple of weeks here for Virginia Tech men's and women's basketball. Stay tuned. We're going to have a show on Thursday talking about this Virginia Tech football schedule. What else is coming up on TSL this week, fellas, before we turn the audience loose?
I'm going to do an inside the numbers on comparing turnover rates from the Mike Young era to the Buzz Williams era. I'll do that tomorrow. I've already compiled the numbers. I've just got to write it.
Looking forward to it.
Then, obviously, we'll do a schedule column later on the week, which is always one of my favorite things to do. For me, I hope Virginia Tech gets Clemson as early as possible. I think, you play Rutgers at home. We already know that they'll be solid. And then if you can play Clemson early, like the first couple of ACC games, like you'll know exactly who you are as a football team pretty early if you can get Clemson early on the ACC slate, as opposed to this past year when you didn't really know who Tech was until well into the second half of the season.
What's coming up for anybody else this week?
Basketball stuff. I'll have a Boston College preview later today. The women have Georgia Tech on Thursday, so we're busy, man. It's basketball Tuesday in Castle. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Monday, Thursday.
We're not all busy. There's not a lot of football stuff. Schedule stuff. I actually might help out David with the Duke game next Monday. We'll see about that. But I got some recruiting stuff in terms of. I always take a historical look back 5 years ago, see how those recruiting classes, because we always talk, everybody signs and everybody's, this guy's going to be a star, this guy's going to be a star. And then you get the 5 years out and you go, not all of them were stars. There's always like a third that make it, a third that are sort of middling, and a third that kind of wash out. So
and then you beat out Delaware State for players and they become NFL guys.
Nobody saw Dorian Strong being the All-American type or Christian Darrisaw being the All-American type. But I like looking back at those and just kind of seeing where these guys ended up. And it's even more interesting in the transfer portal era with all the opportunities they have post-Tech.
Sweet. And Nick Brown's putting together an article this week of top 25 mustaches in Virginia Tech athletics history. So be on the lookout for that.
And one more thing that I don't want to get lost in the shuffle because they were off this week, but Virginia Tech wrestling is back at home on Friday too. Jack Brizendine is going to chat with Tony Roby and some of the I think, or maybe some of the players this week, and he'll have a preview on that. And that's another home event. So a lot of stuff going on outside of football, I guess.
Folks, and it's crazy to say, but you got baseball, softball, women's lacrosse right around the corner already.
And Nick really should write that article, or at least do a YouTube short on it. Because we've got all the old media guides dating back to the 80s in the office. You can flip through them, and dude, all those dudes had mustaches back then. It looked crazy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
Bud Foster with a mustache. Steiny had a mustache.
He did have a mustache.
Mike Gentry had a mustache.
Oh, he had a
still
great
does.
one.
They'll just like melt your face off. You just look at it. It's like, okay, I'll just start doing push-ups in your presence. That's how good your mustache is.
There we go. What is your fellow's ability to grow stashes? Like,
None.
have you ever even given it
I grew a
shot?
beard in the pandemic, and I
COVID.
was surprised that I did it somewhat well.
You just recently changed that as your profile picture, right? On Twitter? Or maybe
I
not.
used to have one a while ago
Okay.
with it. I figured it was time to change it though, since I hadn't had the beard in a long time. But my dad has a mustache. I don't know if that's translated to my generation.
There we go.
That well.
Gotcha. Well, Nick Brown.
The younger generation, Nick, you guys are bringing it
They're
back.
definitely coming
now.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick was the first one out of all the interns to grow out the facial hair and go with the blonde stash. So
It's a bold look.
yeah, indeed it is. I think that wraps things up for today. Thanks for joining us. Episode 342 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Again, it was brought to you by First Bank and Trust Company. For Nick Brown, for Andy Bitter, for David Cunningham, for Chris Coleman, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long from Blacksburg. We'll see you on Thursday.